Hey guys, welcome to the Improvement Season podcast. It is me, Steve Hall, and today I do not have the floor. I have the Solomon. How's it going, Solomon?
It's going well. How are you?
I'm actually pretty good. Because now I'm dieting, and we'll talk more about you because I think it's much rarer we have you on the show. But I just said last week that the honeymoon phase is finished, and I'm getting to the point of dieting where some mornings, like my breakfast was easily tiding me through to like having my first training session, and then post-workout was fine. Whereas now I'm like, I almost want like a breakfast, then another small pre-workout meal. And I'm like, I don't have the calories to play with to do that as well as I should. But no, I can't complain too much. How are things?
How long has it been now?
I have been dieting. I think this will be my 9th week of dieting. So it's just gone so fast.
And what are you down in these 9 weeks?
So my peak mass, I always like to reference this, right? I held 200 for a while, but I hit 202 for like a good week. So I like to say 202, but really I was holding 200 for like a month. So I hit a new low today, which was basically 182 pounds. So I'm down like 20 pounds almost.
Yeah, about 10% of your body weight. I think that's kind of the general rule to where people are like, yeah, once you've lost about 10%, you're probably going to start feeling it.
Yeah. The trouble is, I think I have at least another probably 10% to stage.
Yeah.
If not a little bit more than that still. So.
And then so this is going to turn into Ride Interviewing, Steve, but do you have like a kind of a primer phase baked in, like planned in for once you get to a certain like leanness before you kind of take that final breath and dive in towards the prep?
That's exactly it. So I planned in basically like 3 mesocycles back to back of cutting initially, and then 2 back-to-back primer phases before. I think I have like 4. If I get to British finals, it'll be 4 mesocycles worth of dieting before the actual finals. So I was just saying to Pascal, I'm kind of at that point where I'm like, I'm dipping to my lower end settling point where I'm comfortable. Do I want to dip a bit lower so I have less to lose, but try and maintain maybe a body fat that's unsustainable? Or do I keep dieting? Break sooner and then like maintain a level of body fat that's maybe more maintainable and then have more to lose? And I was like, I don't think there's really a right answer there. But at the moment, I'm planned. I'm in week 3 of my mesocycle, so I have 2 more weeks of dieting. I will take a proper deload diet break, the next one, then 5 weeks of dieting, and then it will be like I have planned 8 weeks of maintenance before the kind of real prep begins, which is why at the moment this is still being called the Improvement Season podcast rather than Revive to Stage. But Pascal is he's kind of saying he's properly in prep, and in many ways I feel like I'm kind of getting there at least. I always like to say for like competitors, I like to get them down to a level of leanness where they're visible muscle separation all over. So like quads are starting to come through. That's often like the last place for guys. So for me, I'm starting to see, especially if I hit the lighting right, I get the quads, like the kind of the separations all coming through, which is quite exciting. But it just reminds me how much like there's a big difference between like lean and then shredded. Like now I look lean and people are like, oh yeah, that's impressive. I'm like, yeah, but to actually get shredded, there's just so much more that's going to have to come off.
Yeah. And it's going to get harder for each additional pound that has to come off for sure.
Yeah. The good thing is I've managed to like, I might be in a position where I can really slow down the rate of loss. That's something I'm considering. So rather than losing it like 0.75% per week into the next mesocycle, I might lose it like 0.5 or even less and just be like I'm still getting a bit leaner. I'm still edging my way closer to stage, but I'm not kind of creating the same sort of fatigue and difficulty. So then hopefully that maintenance really will dissipate quite a lot of fatigue. So we'll have to see.
Yeah. And, just looking at the flip side of that, I wonder if the argument could be made that, so I often hear, and I think it totally makes sense, that the rate of loss as you get closer to stage, probably a good idea to slow that down to better retain muscle and stuff like that. But part of me also thinks that maybe slowing that rate of loss just prolongs that time that you spend to where it kind of sucks. So maybe not slowing that down a ton, wouldn't be the worst idea either. But then, you want to make sure that you don't show up to where you lose muscle and stuff like that. So definitely there's always the other side of these things.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting because bodybuilding, we're taking aspects of periodization nutritionally now, like with the breaks and everything, which we never used to. And so it used to be the case, bodybuilders would be like peak off season and then they'd start their contest prep and they'd do it like 20 weeks. Whereas now it's like their peak off season and now they're doing 40 weeks. And I'm kind of at the moment in the middle of that where I'm like, I'm not in prep. So I'm like doing a diet and then holding and then a 20-week kind of diet for my true contest prep, but slower and not being like as fat. But I know there's people who I'll be competing potentially on stage with who haven't even started their prep yet. And they have that 20 pounds that I've already lost, but then I'll be maintaining a lean physique whilst they're still having to chop down. It's like, well, like you said, is it better to have just prolonged it and not break it up? Or is it better to have broken it up? And I don't think we can say for sure yet, but I think at least having had 2 contest preps so far under my belt, the first one where I went from 190 to 160 all in one go and barely had any refeeds even, that became quite hellish, but I still got shredded and I still got down there, versus the last one where I was like 10 pounds above stage weight and I had like months upon months to get ready. It was too much time for the level of leanness. So I'm trying to find that middle ground. And I think every time you do it, you learn something and you improve. So we'll have to see. One thing I can guarantee is I will be shredded. That will happen.
Yeah, for sure. And, you mentioned like getting down to kind of the lower end of your settling point. And I know that when I would hear people talk about that, the number one thing that I would want to hear is like, how do you know where that point is? So like, what are you looking for yourself to when you're getting down at that kind of lower end of your settling point?
It's a tricky one because I don't think there's like definitive rules necessarily, because so much of like settling points I think are environmental, and I think you'd completely agree. Like I think Menno Henselmann's obviously, I think he's been quoted to say things like, you shouldn't have to struggle to get abs. It just comes down to like habits, basically. Like everyone can get a 6-pack. It's just setting your lifestyle up right. And in many ways I agree, but your arbitrary, like I can remember being very lean and maintaining that, but my God, like I didn't feel quite normal, and my lifestyle and the way I would approach like eating out and the way I'd approach like my day-to-day eating was not quote unquote normal. So it's definitely a difficult one. So I think for me, I've always found libido and like that element of just like being male, and if that is functioning fairly normally, I think I can be safe that I'm not below my settling point. But if I've got like, and it's just a bit of a weird thing to talk about, like libido all the time. But for me, it just, I found it to be much more predictive than other things. But if I found, and this isn't necessarily via bloods, but it's just like, if I have no thoughts of anything in like a sexual nature in a week, there's something not quite right there. Like as a guy who's plenty young, like, and obviously just, I should be biologically looking to like reproduce, and so those thoughts should come through. So I think that's definitely one for me. And then I don't know, if you're arbitrarily having to like have loads of veggies with every meal, or you've got lots of like chewing gum and sweeteners within your diet, you've got lots of diet foods, effectively you're using lots of like diet strategies to make sure that you're maintaining that. I think like is that your settling point, or is that your like, you've managed to set up your environment in such a way that allows you for that to be somewhat sustainable? But I don't know if I reckon you've got some good thoughts on this as well.
I think it's really tricky because like you said, like, man, libido's a good one. And other than that, like some people look towards like sleep levels, and if sleep starts to get disrupted, or stress and more anxiety throughout the day. But I think that one's so tough because there's so many like confounding variables that can influence your sleep from day to day, or your stress from day to day. And, I think that some people might get caught in a trap to where if they think that if their sleep was disrupted for a couple of nights, then they might start thinking, oh, I'm too lean or something like that. And then they worry about that more and get more anxiety about it. And then it's just this cycle, when in reality, it could have just been hey, for whatever reason, today you had bad sleep and there was really nothing behind it. So I think that trying to look at a variety of factors, whether it's sleep, like you said, are you a little bit more food focused? Are you seeing some of those behaviors of, you're probably not to the point to where you're like bowl guarding and doing that sort of thing yet, but if you need massive salads and stuff like that at every meal, and then if you're also noticing like lower libido, maybe more irritable throughout the day, if all those are lining up, and it's probably like, hey, maybe we're getting towards the lower end of our settling point. But then one might argue, well, if we maintain this for a while, would that change our settling point? Which gets you into another argument of how much your settling point can change over time and stuff like that. So yeah, it's definitely a complicated topic, which with the dynamic system of being a human being, it's kind of the nature of the beast.
Yeah, I think you brought up some really good points, and one I'd really emphasize is the fact we don't live in a vacuum. So you can't be sure that one thing is leading to another thing. And so, especially over a prolonged period of time. But I definitely think if all the things you mentioned there, if you've been also eating at maintenance for a good number of weeks and that's still all happening.
Right.
But again, like James Krieger brought it up in the podcast we had recently with him. He's like, these obese people, they always have this kind of shadow following them. Doesn't matter how long they've been maintaining this new loss, they still have this kind of like, they have a depressed like metabolic rate, and you can't fully necessarily bring it all back up. So yeah, for me, I'm just I think looking if other people are thinking about it, for me in particular, I know I've been like a thinner guy, I've always been able to get lean fairly comfortably. And I think for myself, I know I'm getting to that point where if I get much leaner than this, it's I used to have the body weight of like 170. For me, that was like, to get below 170 pounds was, I had to put forward a monumental effort. So we'll see if my weight's been very easily just going down. So if I start hitting that around 180, like if that starts being something that I'm really struggling to get over, and I have to like, I think actually that's a good point. If you find yourself trying to get below a certain body weight and you're having to like, I don't know, jack up steps, jack up cardio, really reduce calorie intake to get through that, that's probably where it's like, that's that settling point, lower end, where it's just like, that's the where you have to start digging through it.
Yeah, I think that's 100% a good marker, that sticking point of where things are like, man, it's getting hard now, is probably that, okay, probably around that settling range. So I think that's a really good one.
How's things on your end anyway? You're not dieting right now, are you?
So actually, I am just about to finish up a little bit of a fat loss phase here. I am getting down to around upper 160s, lower 170, which for me, kind of like just what you said of when you, in the past, when you used to get down to 170, going under that was kind of takes a lot more effort. That's kind of for me around upper 160s. Getting much below that is where things start to get hard. So I've got like literally one more pound to go or something like that before I turn things around. And then the game plan over the next probably year is to gain another 15 to 20 pounds over like about 12 months. So pretty slow and steady and that sort of thing. But with where I'm at with things, that suits my preferences and stuff like that. So yeah, that's kind of the game plan. Really I tend to like having kind of slow and steady gaining phases, and that goes really well with kind of my preferences and stuff like that. But yeah, that's kind of the game plan.
And I don't know if last time we spoke, I feel like you were just finishing or you'd finished school, but you've definitely finished. I say school, it's not school, is it? It's university in the States as well, isn't it? Yeah.
Yep. So probably last time we talked was right around when I was wrapping up my master's degree. So all done with that now. And I don't know, I did med school. Like I had really good professors and I had a really good class, and I kind of miss it now, not seeing them every day and stuff like that. So like for me, it wasn't like a huge stress or something like that. I don't think that our particular graduate program was like crazy difficult or anything like that. So my life is kind of the same, except I just don't go to classes now. So it's still good.
So, yeah, I mean, You haven't graduated yet though? You haven't had results yet? You're still waiting for that, or I don't even know when all this stuff happens. I'm awful.
Nope, you're good. So I have had the results and stuff. I have my diploma, all that sort of thing.
Oh, sweet.
So I'm pretty quiet about it to where I don't think it's that big of a deal. So I don't really. You probably wouldn't know it, like if you followed me and stuff. So, yep, all the results are in. I'm officially a master of exercise science, although I still feel like I know nothing, but, comes with the territory, I guess.
I just want to repeat that statement. You are a master of exercise science. That just sounds, it's like Jedi. I'm a Jedi. I'm no one.
I wish that's what I called.
Am a Padawan.
Instead of a master's degree. I really wish it was called the Jedi degree, but, it is what it is.
I don't know then what you'd have as a PhD. It would be like, I don't know. The Emperor.
The Emperor. That would be good.
I don't know.
I don't know the next level up from that.
So, yeah, and then, well, actually, we could crack on. I don't know if it'll be interesting because one of these questions is interesting in that it's talking about, from Brandon, it's asking about being a coach. And obviously, now you've got a bit more time because you're not doing your studies as much, and you can start gaining more experience as a coach, taking on more clients, which is super exciting because I know the people you've been working with have been loving it and getting great results. And Brandon asked favorite parts about being a coach, so I thought that's actually a really interesting question.
Yeah, so I would say for me, when my clients are getting results, like that's so much better than when I get results with myself. Like when they have like a transformation and stuff like that, the best part about it is when it's not so much like the physical part, but like their entire life gets better to where, they notice they are less stressed at work, or they notice that they are able to stick to their studies more, or it just benefits every other area of their life. And, that's kind of what got me into coaching, is because this whole lifting thing improved every single area of my life. And, I know, shout out to James Walsham. He posted in our member site kind of a question like, is bodybuilding a kind of a futile endeavor? Meaning like,
right,
is it kind of pointless? And I could totally see how you might think that for sure. But I think that the carryover that bodybuilding has in every other area of someone's life makes it a very kind of meaningful pursuit. Now, that doesn't mean it necessarily has to be bodybuilding, but I think that those physical pursuits of improving yourself can definitely impact other areas. So yeah, that's my favorite part for sure, is when I see those kind of life changes. But what do you think? How would you answer that?
I was going to say, it's not the kind of sipping pina coladas on the beach and with your feet up and with your Mac.
No, definitely not.
I think that's becoming, people are realizing more and more that isn't at least what we do. I'm sure there is some online coaches that can do that, especially those that actually outsource their coaching. So you think you're being coached by this like celebrity and actually you're getting some sort of other person behind the screen. But regardless,
ridiculous.
I know. I loved your statement there, actually. It made me think, as soon as you brought it up about how bodybuilding impacts other areas of your life so positively, it just makes me think of like Arnold Schwarzenegger, and you think like, what a guy. And I think he would probably admit, and he probably has spoken about it, where bodybuilding has given him that kind of routine, structure, hard work, dedication, and he's then applied that to politics, he's applied it to business, he's applied it to his career in acting, and it's made him to become like a name that people are going to remember for like years and years and years to come, decades to come. So yeah, I completely agree with that. And I actually really agree. I even got a message, I think it was today, from one of my clients, and it's these sort of messages that just make you realize how worthwhile everything is, because you sometimes don't think you're having that big an impact. And I think on some clients, you don't necessarily have a huge impact for them, but on others, you really do. And when they say how they've applied some of the things that you've been talking through with them to like their clients, to their business, and it's just made such a miraculous difference to not only their physiques, but then they've been able to like apply that to other areas of their life and their kind of business. That's like, you never think that you're able to do such a thing for someone. But I think as a coach, you don't really realize how important you are to the client and how that weekly check-in sometimes means so much to them. And I don't know if you've had enough yet, Ryan, to have got to a point where you've had it where a client maybe has left for whatever reason and they've ended up like crying in a video because of how much that relationship is meant to them. And that crushes me. At the same time, it really validates how important what we do is for people. And obviously, importantly, they're crying because they're kind of happy, not because it's like something terrible has happened and they can't go on their own. But it's kind of like, you mean a lot to these people. So I think when people don't respect that as a coach, it can be quite upsetting.
For sure. And I actually have had some of that already. And, I don't know, sometimes it makes me feel bad. Like that our relationship is so good that they feel like they have to stay on with coaching to continue that relationship and that sort of thing. It's like, hey, I'm still here. I'm still on the internet. Like you can still email me and stuff. It's okay. But yeah, it's building that connection with people and actually developing those relationships, I think, is the best part about coaching for sure.
Life goes on and they're upset in that moment, but then you catch up with them down the line and they're like, oh, like everything's going really well. And that means so much. And that's what coaching is about, actually. It's like we talked, it's not really about the physical loss, or it's a lot of the time it's that physical part, but also like the psychosocial and what you've been able to help them do in their life. And often it's kind of just frees up a load of stress that they were holding on to, and now they can use that extra energy to put into other areas of their life.
Yep, absolutely agree.
Hey guys, hope you're enjoying the podcast. Just wanted to take one moment of your time to actually talk about our coaching services over at Revive Stronger. We at Revive Stronger, we offer an incredible premium personal coaching service just for people like you, and I know you will love it. Do you want to work with us? Here's what I need you to do. Head over to revivestronger.com. Go up to the coaching tab, click on online coaching. Once there, read through the requirements and what it takes to be an online client. Once finished, hit apply now and you're only one step away from applying to our services. Fill out the Google form and you're done. And that was basically it. A coach is going to reach out to you shortly, and then it's Team Revive Stronger.
Cool. So let's rock into the questions. And we have, of course, Andrew Pottercheck. He will ask a question every week. It's great. So Andrew has asked views on, I've been getting this question a lot recently, so I'd love to actually get your answer on this, Ryan. Views on carb cycling, bulking or cutting using it. And then he has a second question. I'll ask that after.
Yeah. So I actually did my presentation for like Muscle MBA was on if like calorie cycling while gaining makes sense. And my consensus at the end of that was, I don't think it's like the worst ideal in the world. Like I think on paper, it makes sense to have your energy intake at a consistent surplus with your or being in a consistent surplus every day. So if you are expending more energy on a certain day compared to another one, it would make sense to be in that consistent surplus. However, I think nailing that down, what your energy output is very tricky. And, I think that people used to think that lifting weights burns tons and tons of calories. And I think that it's becoming more kind of common knowledge that, hey, lifting weights might burn like a similar amount of calories as going for a walk during that same hour. So I think that if you equate like steps each day, then your energy expenditure from day to day might actually be fairly similar. So if you're going through a gaining phase and your energy expenditure from day to day is actually pretty similar, then does it really make sense to cycle calories? Probably not, especially someone's training like 5 or 6 days a week and they're kind of always quote unquote in that anabolic window. Then they're likely going to be putting that surplus to kind of good use. Now, if someone came to me and they told me that, hey, on days they lift, they don't track steps and stuff like that, and they know that they're less active on off days, and they're a lot more hungry on days they lift, and they're seeing those differences in appetite and stuff like that, then I'll be like, cool, I'm fine with a couple hundred calories difference here. And that would likely come via carbs. So cycling those carbs a little bit. But man, for most people, I keep things pretty steady throughout the week. So that's kind of during a gaining phase. I think that keeping things largely the same for most people is probably a good idea, unless kind of their hunger cues or their activity levels are just very different on like training and off days. Now, during a cutting phase, I think that I could probably see a little bit better of an argument for a little bit of calorie cycling. And at least the story I tell myself is that on days you train, maybe having a little bit of, maybe that carb timing matters more so maybe during those days you train, maybe being able to allocate a little bit more carbs pre-workout or even during your workout might be beneficial compared to just having a little bit less on days that are your off days. Now, I also wouldn't make it a huge difference. And there's some research on like within day energy deficits, and just having a huge energy deficit within a single day or on a certain day might be less favorable than having a more consistent deficit from day to day. So I still wouldn't want to get carried away with it. But hey, maybe having an extra 25 to 50 carbs on those training days might allow for a little bit better workouts, which could help muscle retention and stuff like that. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. What do you think? Am I crazy?
No, yeah, you're not crazy. And unsurprisingly, probably we have very similar opinions on this. And I think, like you said, for most of the listeners, they're probably training at least 4 times a week, probably, if not upwards of 5 and 6. And then on those rest days, they're kind of still in a recovery period of time, especially if they're not having them all like back to back to back. So I'm completely with you that unless there's a particular preference for it, or unless someone is cutting, which I could see there being some rationale behind when you are dieting, nutrient timing definitely becomes more important, and your goals become a little bit more serious. And every kind of, you feel it, especially in a contest prep, every little bit of carbohydrates, you feel it. The difficulty in that case is then sometimes the rest day becomes kind of unlivable because your carbohydrates, like you said, you don't want to dramatically drop them, but sometimes
exactly
when you're not training, you actually sometimes become a bit hungrier because it's like a period of time where you're not thinking about food, and that's quite nice. So it becomes tricky, and I tend not to cycle too much. And I think a lot of this has come from kind of looking at maybe acute mechanistic data of when we come down in carbs, insulin sensitivity is raised. But I just don't think that short-term increase in insulin sensitivity is really doing anything for people. I think it's a lot of like just juggling things and potentially making the whole process more complicated and more annoying than anything. And like you said, I'm on the side of preferences. So if they want to have a few more calories one day because hunger dictated that, or if they're eating out that day, then they can reduce some calories from another day. And I'm not too concerned if that's like up to like 20% of their calorie intake.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, I think that one potential downside of someone cycling carbs and cycling calories as well is the relationship that might develop with like food. It's like you have to train to eat enough food on a certain day. And if you're not training, then you can't eat anything. And, that's probably not the best way to, live your life. So I think that that's also a consideration. And with people that may have more of a background of potential disorder-like behavior, maybe keeping things a little bit more level and more consistent day to day might kind of help with that. So,
I think it's actually very interesting. Harry Smith, a coach on the team, he talked about how like something a lot of people end up doing is like calorie backloading, and he called it kind of like the pseudo binge, where you're like restricting all the day. And I think it's totally a fair point to make the point you made, and like it's the same for like intermittent fasting. Sometimes it's just kind of keeping people in that probably not great mindset of kind of food reward, because they restrict, they get a reward. And I've seen people carry over refeeds into off season, and I'm just like, I don't understand what refeed's like you're not refeeding. Refeeding is when you're in a deficit and you're coming out of that. This is like just a huge surplus now, and I think it can be tricky business. And I'm a big favor of just like long-term averages. Keeping things somewhat level tends to provide better overall results for people long term.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a really good point about kind of backloading all your food towards the end of the day. And kind of Harry's Instagram post that he made about it is like, I know I've been there in the past where I would save all my calories for the end of the day. And then to top it all off, like, I don't think it would be as big of a deal if you save some more calories and then you had a larger meal of like whole nutritious foods. But what I often see is that people save all those calories and then they have just a super calorie dense meal of ice cream or something like that. And then half of their calories for the day are spent on really calorie dense foods, which isn't going to be good for hunger management and stuff like that. Plus, they're probably thinking about that food all day long, about having that huge reward at the end of the day. So they're more food focused, probably more irritable throughout the day because they're not eating anything. And then I know for me, like when I would have that big kind of reward at the end of the day, literally as I would be eating that food, I'd be like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have each bite I get towards finishing this is going to be one bite closer to having to wait another day for this meal. So like, what the hell is the point of that? So yeah, I think that's a really good point.
Man, we can just keep going and talk about circadian rhythms and how eating late at night is maybe not. We'll get to another question. It's fine. Otherwise, we just keep digging a hole. So he asked future goals, business, and life after prep. But just, I'd be interested to hear your future goals and like if you now you finish school. I guess it's like you're not. Maybe you do already have like ideas of where you want to go. I'm not sure.
Yeah. So I'll start with like fitness goals. I don't know. I think I'm unique to kind of the Revive team to where I don't necessarily see myself competing. Like I say that now, but I'm going to see all you guys step on stage this year and maybe someday I'll have the itch, but right now it's not something I totally see myself doing because, I definitely understand the costs to doing that. Like it's probably pretty close to a year of your life that you're dedicating towards getting super lean, and probably maybe even more than that when you consider the recovery phase and stuff like that. So potentially not something that I'm going to do. Now, for my kind of physique goals, my lower body, like from the waist down, I'm pretty cool with. Like, that sounds like such a bro, and hey, I'm okay with it. But I got into lifting through sports and stuff like that in high school, and we were very lower body dominant with squats, deadlifts, stuff like that the entire time. So like my lower body, I've been lifting my lower body pretty hard since like 7th grade in middle school. So a very long time. And I feel like my lower body is sufficiently developed to where I'm cool with. So basically over these next couple of years, my main focus is going to be on the upper body, the chest, back, shoulders, arms. And I actually trade a little bit of traps as well and a little bit of forearms just because my goal is just to kind of look good day to day. So I think that your traps and your forearms for sure play a role in how muscular your entire physique looks. And one thing I noticed, like when I would get pretty dang lean and I didn't have like traps, is it's like you kind of have a popsicle head a little bit to where things just kind of look off. So long way of saying, kind of cool with my lower body. I'm going to be trading like a bro over the next year or so and try to get that upper body a little bit more beefy. So that is my fitness goals. Now, life goals. That's a good question. I, of course, revive stronger until we dominate the world and conquer everything. But I really love coaching. Absolutely want to continue doing that. I also like investing and finances and stuff like that really interests me as well. Like I'm the lamest 23-year-old that you'll know. but I love that stuff too. So investing, doing something like that in the future, absolutely. And then I potentially am going to be moving here soon. I'm currently in Iowa, and I don't know, there's not a lot going on in Iowa. So I might kind of the Denver area or something like that, considering that just because I like snowboarding and that sort of thing. So that's kind of what I'm thinking, but man, things are definitely going to change, and I'm okay with that too. So, yep. What about you, Steve?
Well, I was just going to say, you're living at home at the moment, and did you live at home whilst at uni, or were you
So
ever away?
my last semester of grad school, I did commute from home because I just had classes on Tuesday and Thursday, and I was only about 50 minutes from my school. So I did commute my last semester. So I've been at home since then.
Yeah, I was just going to say, because for me, I was at university, and I was obviously, I was in Nottingham, which is quite far away from where my hometown is. So I was on campus, and then I went into, in halls, and then I went into like housing with people, and that was like all right. But it wasn't until I then moved home and worked like office jobs for a year or so and just saved. And then I moved out with Charlotte after a few years. And that's when I was just getting into online coaching and could barely afford to pay London rent, which is quite cool because that forced me to up my game and make sure that I was making enough. But moving and being out of home, and I guess part of it was actually being like self-employed at home all day. There was something incredibly rewarding and really the self-efficacy you get from doing that. Like I'm kind of jealous of you doing that for the first time. Well, not first time, but like properly now, because it's really cool. Like you're just like, I don't know, it sounds stupid, but like going and buying your groceries, like doing all the stuff you have to do for yourself. You may already do a lot of it, but when you're in your own place, it's really cool. And then you sit down at the end of the day and you're just like, oh, like this is like you're properly an adult. And that first few years, I really enjoyed that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like complete freedom, and then like it's like everything's in your hands, and you're taking care of all of your own stuff going on. And I think that, you know, I definitely got a little bit of a taste of that in college with that sort of thing. But you know, I've mainly lived with like 4 other guys, which man, could I have some stories for you? But yeah, I think that'll be cool when I am finally kind of free and clear on my own. Like, love my parents and all that sort of thing, but you know, moving out is definitely something that will be cool.
You're an only child, right? And do you drink, or do you?
So I have one older sister, and she is about I said that weird, about. She's a few years older than me, and she's a teacher and stuff. But yep, one older sister. And as for drinking, I am not like a big drinker and stuff like that, as with most bodybuilders, but I'm definitely not opposed to 2 or 3 times a month having a few drinks. Now, I don't go crazy with it and stuff like that. Like, I can't sacrifice that muscle protein synthesis that much, but I do like a couple times a month, a few drinks with friends is something I do enjoy doing. And I think that, you know, when it comes to drinking, like one of the hardest parts for me through college was being the guy that was like more moderate with things. And, you know, for anybody listening to this and they're running into that situation where people are giving you shit about not drinking and stuff like that, like, for one, who gives a shit anyways? Like, they're going to care for like 2 seconds and then they're going to be fine. Yeah. And then for 2, if you're able to kind of laugh it off and just call it out originally, like, hey, you guys know I'm the fitness guy, I'm not going to be getting super hammered here. It just kind of clears the air really well. And yeah, so that, I guess that was my long way of answering that.
No, that's really cool because in terms of the drinking, especially, I found you're better than me because at university, I just in life, I'm all or nothing, essentially. So at university, I was all in. When I drank, and I drank it all, and I was still wet. And I had a bad relationship with it where like I'd go drinking and then the next day I would restrict and go on like long runs and try and burn it off. And having gone through that experience, it was horrible. And I eventually got to the point you're at where like I'll have a few now and then. I'm not like teetotal, but in general, I don't drink. And I guess, I don't know if it's thankfully, but I've just never liked the taste of beer. I'm a very much, and I guess the wrong term is girl, but kind of girl. People understand when you say like you drink like a girl, it's like sweet drinks. And yeah, I'm all about the sweet drinks if I can get hold of those. But I completely respect that. And I think it's, well said by you that people don't care. And once you've told them and they're your actual friends, they're like, okay, that's you, legit, cool. And you can still be there and enjoy the night, and you don't need to feel like shit the next day, apart from sometimes just the sleep is bad enough for me.
Yeah. And interestingly, I think that there's actually research on just having like a single nightcap or a single drink at night negatively impacts sleep. So that's probably like one of the biggest things. But, you know, at the end of the day, like for me and my goals, like I said, I'm not necessarily trying to maximize every ounce of muscle in the off season so I can compete. So given that, like I'm pretty cool. Like over the next 5 years, if someone told me like, hey man, you're going to get, instead of gaining 10 pounds of muscle, you're going to gain 7. So get in about 70% of your potential results. I'd be like, you know what? I'm pretty cool with that. And I think that having a few drinks every 2 or 3 weeks probably fits into that pretty well, if that even does backtrack things like at all. So yeah. And don't get me wrong, I've had nights where I'm not as moderate as I would like to be. So I don't want you to think that I'm like perfect with this either, you know?
Oh God, my 18th was particularly awful. I think I ended up home like at 10 p.m. because I was already like paralytic, and I was sick in my sister's car when she was taking me home, and I was very bad. That was a bad time. But yeah, the run-in with the van completely changed my outlook on all of that sort of thing. So yeah. But to not dig too far into that, what was I going to say? I was going to say you were sounding like a complete bro. You don't train your legs. You go out drinking. Why are you even a coach? I'm really like not sure about this now.
I'm the worst. I know. But, you know, it is what it is. And, you know, I think that that's another point to where like, I think a lot of people like don't actually really think about what they want to get out of their kind of physical training.
Yeah.
And, you know, hey, if you don't want to compete, like, that's fine. If you do want to compete and you want to grow everything, that's also fine. But just really think about what are your specific goals. And just because someone on Instagram or on social media has a certain goal and you think that they're awesome, that doesn't necessarily mean that that has to be your goal either. So yeah, I don't know where that came from, but yeah.
No, this is actually a really important chat, I think, because that's something I think at Revive Stronger, I hope people know us for that, where it's a case of, for every client, if you want to take it there and you want to maximize every little thing, like we're very open to that. And that is why you've hired us. But if you're someone who you have other things going on in your life, you enjoy like a drink now and then, we're totally open to that. And I think there probably is, unfortunately, coaches who, if you join them, you're expected to do everything and invest everything into it. That might not be for you. And so I'm glad that we can be flexible enough to be able to help people with a broad range of goals. And I really liked your perspective on right now, that's not what you want to do. You don't want to invest 100% into it. Whereas like for me, for the last 3 years or even more than that, maybe I have been investing like a lot, almost I would say 100% into this bodybuilding thing. But I'm also under the impression of after this season, depending how things go and how much I continue to enjoy and kind of pull enjoyment out of it, I'm very open to the idea of pulling back a little bit and maybe focusing on some other things and knowing that that's going to potentially reduce results. But I am also very satisfied to know I've put 100% in for a prolonged period of time and very close to possibly a kind of a limit to where much more investment maybe isn't worth it. And then you just have to make that choice yourself. So no, I really thought that was a good discussion. I wanted to draw it from what you had said. And so you did it and reminded me. So I'm Steve Hall, founder of Revive Stronger and a coach of Revive Stronger.
My name is Pascal Flor. I'm the co-owner of Revive Stronger and also a coach, of course. Revive Stronger has probably been going solidly for 3 years, roughly about 3 years. Revive Stronger, to me, it is becoming kind of my child, my foster child. It's the gathering and getting together of like-minded people. We've been expanding the coaching team, which is helping us help more people, but each coach can only help a certain number of people. Right now, it's all over the place. We have YouTube, we have Facebook, we have Instagram, but there isn't that community aspect behind that. And so the next step for us is developing a membership site. So basically, we want to create a family and a community that is then benefiting from another. A really cool community for people within our little niche is going to be a website. They will get early access to our podcast. You can access us, ask us questions, the community aspect. We have a forum there. You can ask questions, but also you can log your journey. There's also going to be courses on there, presentations on different topics, discount of past seminar footage. We will log our journey as well. We'll start vlogging. We're going to have documentaries, our entire athletic journey. Furthermore, they get access to an exercise video library. The exercises that we love for hypertrophy and maximizing hypertrophy, we're going to go through those in depth, telling you how to execute them. We kept them concise and also mobile friendly so that you can watch them in between your sets. I'm super excited to grow this community. The amount of value that we're going to be delivering is huge, and I'd love you to be part of it. You will get so much out of that. I'll see you inside.
Yeah, and I think that if someone wants to give everything to bodybuilding and stuff like that, like I think that that's absolutely fine and that's awesome. But like there's absolutely a cost to that. Like for you yourself, you've been training twice a day. You're crossing every T, dotting every I, and there's absolutely a time cost to that. There's a mental cost to that about just thinking about setting up your training and stuff like that. And when you're training twice a day, 6 days a week, like that's going to keep you from potentially doing quite a bit of other things in life as well. So, if that's your goal, then that's awesome. But if that's not your goal, then don't think that you have to do that to get to where you want to be. So yeah, I think that absolutely a good discussion there.
Yeah. And I think on that point, if my life circumstances were different, so if my gym wasn't as close as it was, if I wasn't working from home as often as I am, even if I was still doing the career I'm doing, if I was a personal trainer on the floor, I'm not sure I would be doing as much as I am because I just have other things drawing from me. But I have so much control of my time. My gym's just down the road. It's so easy for me. And in fact, like, I don't know, if I had other colleagues like around me, I probably wouldn't do it as much. But because it's such an easy thing for me, it's just I'm just going through life like that. So no, yeah, cool. Should we get to another question?
Sure.
Cool. So we have Sean. Wait, let's just check if there's any. So we have Mohammed. So Mohammed has asked, is it possible that people who have a history of obesity struggle with fat loss on a cut due to increased number of fat cells? Also, do fat cells tend to fill with water more than normally a leaner person, for example? So the person with a higher number of fat cells will swell more.
So I'm not sure about the water retention in actual fat cells. So I'm not going to have a great answer for that. Now, when it comes to fat cells regarding fat loss, it has not been my experience that individuals that have a history of being more overweight necessarily have a more difficult time to kind of shrink those fat cells and to lose body fat. And what I think is more likely the case is that the more kind of obese you start or the more overweight you start, the longer that diet is. And there's going to be mental fatigue that comes with that. And the lower your body fat levels get, like relatively speaking, the more changes to your hormones and stuff like that you're going to have, because your body fat literally produces leptin, which is kind of the hunger hormone. And body fat is kind of this one big endocrine organ that helps regulate hormones and stuff like that. So man, it's tough. And I think that that's probably one of the reasons why people that are more overweight struggle to kind of have that potentially lose fat in the long run and to lose large amounts of fat. But I think that kind of their first 10, 15% of weight that they lose, I don't necessarily see that being much more difficult. But man, it's kind of like we talked about with the settling point. They're probably have a little bit more of a higher settling range. And I think that a question that I am super interested in is how much someone can actually lower kind of that settling range. And I think that right now, with things I've seen with your body fat, the actual size of the body fat cell is very much so related to how much kind of leptin you produce and different hormones and stuff like that. So when you maintain a reduced fat cell size, I'm not sure how kind of quote unquote normal you're going to feel. Now, I still think that you can reduce your weight and reduce your fat cells, and you will still produce enough of leptin and that sort of thing that is still within kind of normal ranges. But you might just kind of chronically have a little bit lower levels. But I still think that you still might feel fine with that. But man, could somebody maintain a loss of like 100 pounds and absolutely always feel awesome? And if they maintain that for a long time, would that just lower their settling point and they would feel like normal? I'm not sure if that would be the case. You know, I think it's definitely a really tricky situation. Now, if they still have enough kind of absolute body fat, enough total body fat, maybe they would be okay. But man, I think it's tricky. And some research that I'm very much so interested in is some of the research on cryolipolysis, which is basically freezing fat cells to kill them. And an interesting thing that I think that might be useful is if someone developed the habits and developed a routine to reduce their body weight and did so kind of in a healthy manner, and they got down to a leaner level, maybe at that point when they already have those habits in place, maybe freezing those fat cells, killing them off, and then not having those fat cells anymore. And maybe that could potentially help with things, but that's complete speculation and I'm not entirely sure there. And those procedures of cryolipolysis, super expensive at this point, but I think it's a great question. I don't have a great answer for it, but I do think that people with that history of being overweight with potentially more fat cells can absolutely make maintaining a leaner physique a little bit more difficult. And I think that it also, on the flip side, when you turn around into a massing phase, I think that it might increase your propensity a little bit to gain a little bit more fat compared to someone that's always been naturally lean, because you might have some of those fat cells. Now, I'm in the same boat. I was previously overweight in adolescence and stuff like that. Like, it wasn't like crazy. So maybe not to the extent as others, but I still think that there's hope and that people can maintain a reduced body fat and they can still go through gaining phases and put on muscle and stuff like that. It just might mean that you have to kind of cross your T's, dot your I's a little bit more, and potentially optimize things a little bit more, because you might be, playing the game with a little bit of a disadvantage, but that's kind of the cards that you're playing with, and you got to play them as best you can. So that's what I got on that one.
Very well said, to be honest. And in terms of just because I know he talked about the water retention, do fat cells tend to fill with water more than normally a leaner person? I'm not sure about that. I know sometimes when people have been really overweight, they have some loose skin and there's potentially like extracellular space that can fill up with water, and that can lead to some water retention extra. But not totally sure about that. And the same with like you said, the obese person struggling to lose fat, like you said, the first 10-15%, there's no reason they should struggle more with that from a biological perspective. I don't think, if anything, like you said, more fat cells, higher leptin levels, like that should even make like that potentially easier. But again, they might have a higher settling point. They might not get the same result of like leptin that someone else leaner being that big suddenly would feel. So it's all a difficult one. But the only thing I will add to this is when I was a one-on-one personal trainer, I had this client, I forget where he was from, but he was like a foreign dude, and he was a bit on the chubby side, obviously had some money, and he would intermittently fly out. I don't know, I can't remember where, but it was where he was originally from, and he was like a tanned, like it must have been somewhere around Asia, to go and get liposuction, which is very expensive. And I believe, well, liposuction's removing like fat tissue, so I imagine it's removing fat cells as well. I'm not actually sure, but so
I think it is. Yeah.
The thing is, he would do this intermittently, but he'd always put the weight back on. So, and like you can put fat on like you just need to be in a surplus. And I think for him, and I'm just saying this because I think this is probably a big part of why larger people struggle, just habits and psychology and like social factors. They're just, once you're used to eating a certain amount of food, eating certain types of food, I think it can be really difficult. And a lot of you look at leaner individuals, and they are the people that are, oh yeah, I'm not going to take the tube, I'm going to walk. Or yeah, I'm going to have like a salad for lunch because I know I'm going out for dinner. And I think a lot of, I'm not saying this is for everyone, but I think a lot of the bigger people are just used to, yeah, I have a dessert with every meal, and oh yeah, I'm going to take the bus, and these sort of factors. And I don't know, yeah, like you said, I'm not sure of the biology, but yeah, for my guy, unfortunately, he would continue to put that weight back on and then go and get the lipo. And I'm just like, oh God, like you're going through such a like horrible procedure, and you're just being careless with other factors outside that are well in your control. So there's so much going on with, like, obesity is ridiculously complex.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the main reason I wanted to kind of couch that cryolipolysis with, hey, after you've already reduced your weight through habits and stuff like that, then hey, maybe that's something that could help keep it off. But like you said, I think that the social and environmental aspects of when you're overweight like that, like you're probably surrounding yourself with people that are behaving in a similar way, and they expect kind of that behavior out of you. And you've probably identified with some of those behaviors and those people that you're with. So man, it's going to be tough. And you almost have to set that new expectation from other people that you're the person that is going to be doing these more kind of healthy habits. And something that pisses me off so much is fit shaming. So when like someone might at a restaurant, something like that, they might order a salad or say, hey, let's have the dressing on the side, something like that. And the potential looks that you might get from other people around you, or even from friends and stuff like that, or saying like those condescending remarks of, oh, you're so healthy, and those little things, like, oh man, crawls under my skin. And I know that it's probably more so a matter of them projecting their own insecurities on you and that sort of thing. But man, I feel like if someone's trying to make a positive impact in their life, like, man, come on, who are you to say that, or who are you to shame them? Just like how me, like, if someone wants to order a damn pizza and eat a damn pizza, like, I'm not going to care. Like, go for it. That's awesome. Go for it. But yeah, that's definitely something that bothers me and kind of crawls under my skin a little bit.
I feel that so much, because it's not like, I mean, I've certainly been there where I've been out with like friends even, or been out with people, and I see maybe the larger individual who has even maybe commented to me how they're struggling to lose weight, and I see what they order, and then like it might be the pizza, and then they add like chili oil on top, and they have a beer, and I'm just like, dude, like this is not helping you whatsoever. You know, like they just have no idea how many calories they're consuming. And then in the same instance, they feel absolutely fine to say like, I don't know, this is something I sometimes would like to do that I don't do, is like, I don't know, for a pizza, you use your napkin and dot off the oil or something. But I mean, how many people feel comfortable doing that? Probably not that many, but how many people feel uncomfortable adding like chili oil on top? Like everyone feels comfortable doing that because that's way more socially acceptable for some reason. I don't know if things will change in future, but yeah, I definitely feel that. And the kind of identifying as a larger individual and doing certain things, brilliant, because one of my clients who has been on a fat loss journey for quite a while with me now was at the Super Bowl and like celebrating with people, and he ate like a certain amount of some of this junk food and was like, oh, I actually felt really full and I didn't want any more. And he said it felt so weird, and people kind of responded to him in a weird way because they're so used to him being the glutton and eating loads of food. And he was like, it actually felt wrong to him. He was like, I don't know if I like that feeling, but I understand it's just something different and it's a lifestyle change and now he doesn't need to identify as that huge individual that is, and now he's a healthier version of himself. So I can really see how people struggle to accept that. Especially, I don't know, I see it more in like movies and films where it's like the fat, happy person who just like enjoys life, and they show that on the outside, and often they're the upset person on the backside. And I think that probably is relatively true for a lot of people out there. And I feel really bad for them in that way, because it's hard to take control of your life when, your social atmosphere and everything just doesn't seem to abide by that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think if someone is in that position to where like they've surrounded themselves with people that expect them to kind of be that person, to where they expect you to be the binge drinker or the person that is more eats all the food and stuff like that. Like, I think that just having an open and honest communication back and forth with them, like, hey, guys, like I'm kind of not really happy with how my physical body is. And I think it's very important for me to start getting healthier, or to just kind of live a higher quality of life. And man, if they don't respect that decision and they aren't on board with helping you get towards that decision, and some of them will probably want to get on board with you and say, hey, you're totally right, I've been thinking the same thing. And then great, you have kind of a buddy to go along with that. But if other people are going to kind of disrespect that decision and give you shit about it, and there's a difference between like giving you some shit about it and like actually being like resentful towards you because you're doing this and they're not, and that sort of thing, then hey, if they don't respect that kind of open, honest communication and your goals and stuff like that, then it might be a time to say, hey, I'm just not going to be hanging out with that person very much anymore, and kind of go in separate ways.
Oh, I love that. And that's where the whole choosing your circle carefully and kind of auditing that in many ways. And that's where I guess a coach can help loads. Probably have these discussions quite regularly with our clients where we're kind of that person who can help them through these scenarios and like troubleshoot it. So awesome. Great podcast, Ryan. I've really enjoyed chatting.
Awesome. Likewise, man.
So I want to make sure people need to be aware. Ryan is the man behind the Revive Stronger emails. If you're subscribed to that, and if you're not, get on board. The Team Revive Instagram, again, that's all Ryan. He's doing a fantastic job for us. And you also have your own Instagram page, which you are posting regularly, like every week you do post.
Yes, I do try to make sure to post at least once or twice a week. But yeah, the Team Revive Instagram account, definitely much more consistent on that, with regular posts like 5 days a week. So if there's only one you could follow, probably that one. But if you want to follow my shit too, that's cool.
And I tag Ryan regularly in my posts, so you can always find him there. And if you want to reach out to Ryan, drop him a DM, or if you want coaching by Ryan, again, he's on the coaching team, you can apply. And you've seen how much of a smart and great coach he is. And we really appreciate you checking in.
All right. Cheers,
guys.